The night they dragged her into the Alpha King's territory, Elara learned how loud silence could be. The chains around her wrists were silver, threaded, burning with every heartbeat, yet it wasn't the pain that terrified her. It was the way the forest went still as she crossed the border. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, as if the land itself was waiting to see whether she would survive. They said the Alpha King was a monster, that he broke Omegas with a glance and ruled with blood instead of mercy. Elara believed them, right up until the moment she stepped into his throne room and felt her soul snap toward his like a blade drawn from its sheath. Mate. The word struck her harder than any blow. She wanted freedom. He wanted control. Fate wanted both of them bound. So when the Alpha King looked down at her with eyes like a storm about to break and said, "If you endure the night in my bed, Omega, I'll set you free," Elara realized the truth too late. This was never a test of survival. It was a test of the heart, and by morning, one of them would lose everything. "If you endure the night in my bed, Omega, I'll set you free," the Alpha King's fated matey. The night the chains sang, the night blood silver. Moonlight poured over the Blackthorn Mountains like a spilled crown, cold and bright, illuminating the iron gates of Grimhold Keep. Wolves howled in the distance, deep layered voices that rolled across the valleys like thunder trapped inside ribs. Every howl tightened the knot in Elara Vale's chest. She stood in the courtyard with her hands bound, wrists burning where silver, threaded cuffs kissed her skin, and Omega's scent, soft as rain on ash, rose from her despite her effort to bury it. Fear always did that. The guards noticed. They always did. "Head down," one of them muttered, not unkindly. "If he looks at you and you meet his eyes, you'll shake." Elara didn't answer. She lifted her chin. She had been hunted, captured, dragged across borders she didn't recognize, and accused of a crime she didn't commit. She would not bow now. The gates groaned open. Inside the keep, torches flared as if the fire itself sensed who approached. The guards led her through stone corridors carved with ancient runes, laws older than mercy. Every step echoed. Every echo felt like a verdict. At the end of the hall waited the throne room. It smelled of steel and pine and storm wind him, the Alpha King of the North. They pushed the doors wide. The throne was carved from a single slab of obsidian, veined with silver that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Upon it sat King Caldraven, Alpha of Alphas, his presence filling the chamber like gravity. Dark hair brushed his shoulders. His crown was not gold but bone, white antler polished smooth. His eyes, gods, his eyes, were a wolf's winter, pale, ruthless, endless. Conversation died the moment Elara crossed the threshold. Kyle stood. The room seemed to inhale. Elara felt it before she understood it, something snapping taut inside her chest, a thread pulled tight and glowing. Heat rushed through her veins. Her knees nearly buckled. "Mate." The word slammed into her mind like a door blown off its hinges. Across the room, Kale froze, his nostrils flared. His pupils narrowed to slits. For one dangerous heartbeat, the Alpha King looked less like a ruler and more like a predator who had just scented destiny. A murmur rippled through the court. "Impossible," someone whispered. "And Omega," another hissed. The kings faded. Kale lifted a single hand. Silence fell like a blade. He descended the steps slowly, each footfall deliberate. Elara forced herself not to retreat. The cuffs bit deeper as her pulse raced. When he stopped before her, the air between them crackled, scent power, fate tangling like lightning in a storm. "You were taken crossing the frost line," Kale said. His voice was low, controlled, but it scraped along her nerves. "You carry no crest, no pack claim." "I was helping a wounded wolf," Elara replied, steady despite everything. "On neutral land." Kyle studied her face as if reading an ancient text written only for him. His gaze lingered on her mouth, her throat, the faint tremor in her hands. And yet, he said softly, dangerously, you stand in my hall smelling like my fate. A shudder rippled through the court. Elara swallowed. I want no bond, she said. I want my freedom. The word freedom tasted like hope and grief together. Cale's jaw tightened. Freedom, he echoed as if testing whether it would break. Then he turned away, pacing once before the throne. His fingers curled, uncurled. The ancient laws burned in his blood. A fated mate was sacred, irreplaceable, and an Omega, especially one unclaimed, was vulnerable in ways the court would not forgive. Cal stopped. There is a law, he said, voice ringing, older than this crown. If an Omega is claimed by fate but rejects the bond, the Alpha may offer a trial. Alara's heart stuttered. A trial of endurance. Cale continued. His eyes met hers again, and this time there was something raw beneath the steel. One night, the court erupted. Cal raised his voice, cutting through the noise. If you endure the night in my bed, he said, each word deliberate, heavy with power, and greet the dawn unbroken by bond or claim, then I will set you free. No pursuit, no mark, no chain. The silence that followed was absolute. Elara stared at him. Heat flared in her cheeks. Not desire, not yet, but shock and fury and something far more treacherous. And if I fail, she asked. Cal's gaze softened just a fraction. Then fate decides what we could not. Her pulse roared in her ears. A night in the Alpha King's bed was not a promise of pleasure. It was a crucible. Stent, proximity, power. The bond would claw at her from the inside out, but freedom waited on the other side. Elara closed her eyes for one breath. Then she nodded. I accept. The moon climbed higher as Kyle led her to the tower chamber. No chains now, no guards. Just the two of them and the door that closed with a final echoing thud. The room was vast, lit by moonlight spilling through tall arched windows. The bed at its center was carved oak and fir, large enough to swallow fear whole. Kyle stopped at the foot of it. This night, he said quietly, will test us both. Elara met his gaze, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Then don't underestimate me, your majesty. Something like a smile, sharp, restrained, touched his mouth. I wouldn't dare, Omega. The moon watched. The night waited, and fate held its breath, a bed of wolves and moonlight. The door closed behind them with a sound too final to be ignored. Elara stood just inside the chamber, aware of every breath she took. Every inch of space between herself and King Kyle driving the room was warm despite the winter beyond the windows, the hearth glowing low, embers pulsing like a living heart. Moonlight spilled across the bed in silver sheets, turning the furs pale and luminous. Cale did not move closer. That somehow was worse. The law demands proximity, he said at last, his voice roughened, stripped of its courtly edge. Not force. Elara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Good, she said. Because I won't survive force, I will survive truth. Kyle's eyes flickered. Surprise. Respect. Something darker. He gestured toward the bed. Then we begin as equals trapped by fate. She crossed the room slowly, her bare feet sinking into the thick rug. Each step felt deliberate, ceremonial. She sat on the edge of the bed, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. The cuffs were gone, but habit kept her still. Kyle removed his crown. The antler circlet caught the firelight before he set it aside, transforming from symbol to burden in a single motion. When he shrugged off his cloak, the air shifted, his scent deepening, richer now without layers of authority to contain it. Pine, smoke, storm, soaked earth. Elara's Omega instincts stirred uneasily. He noticed. Breathe. Cale murmured. I won't touch you unless you ask. She looked up sharply. You're the Alpha King. You don't have to ask. I do tonight. That quiet statement settled between them, heavy and strange. Kyle lay back on one side of the bed, boots removed, shirt still on. He stared up at the ceiling as if it were safer than looking at her. Elara hesitated only a moment before lying down on the opposite side, the distance between them wide enough to feel intentional. The bed dipped slightly under their combined weight. Silence stretched. Then the bond tugged. It was not a chain, not yet. It was a whisper and ache behind the ribs, a pull like gravity that promised warmth if she surrendered and pain if she didn't. Elara clenched her jaw, focusing on the cold light spilling across the ceiling. "You feel it?" Cale said quietly. "Yes, so do I." His voice was strained now, the alpha held on a thin line of control. Elara turned her head to spite herself. His hands were fisted in the fur blankets, knuckles pale. His breathing was measured, disciplined. For the first time, she saw it. Not a king enjoying power, a man enduring it. "Why offer the trial?" she asked softly. "You could have claimed me in front of the court. No one would have stopped you?" Cal's eyes closed. "Because I know what it is to be owned by destiny without choice." He opened them again, gaze dark. "And I will not begin our story as your captor." Something in Elara's chest loosened, just a fraction. Outside, a wolf howled. Closer this time. The night deepened. Hours passed in fragments, shared silence, measured breaths, the slow burn of something neither of them named. At one point, Elara shivered. The fire had sunk low, and the cold crept in like a thief. Without looking at her, Cal shifted closer, stopping just short of contact. His warmth radiated toward her, steady and controlled. "Is this acceptable?" he asked. She nodded. Their shoulders brushed. The contact was brief, accidental, and yet it sent a spark racing through Elara's veins. She sucked in a sharp breath, fingers curling into the fur. The bond surged in response, bright and demanding. Cal froze. "I can move away," he said immediately. "No," she whispered, surprising herself. "Just don't move closer." Agreed. They lay like that, a single point of contact anchoring them against the storm inside. Elara became acutely aware of the strength in his body, the restraint in every line of him. This was not the monster she had imagined on the road in chains. "This won't be the hardest part," Cale said quietly. "Down is, because the bond strengthens." "Yes," he hesitated. "And because if you leave I will feel it." The honesty in his voice hurt more than cruelty ever could. Elara closed her eyes. For the first time since her capture, sleep found her not deep, not safe, but real. She woke to warmth. At some point in the night, the distance between them had vanished. Cal's arm lay behind her, not touching, a barrier against the cold. Her back was inches from his chest. His breath brushed her hair. The bond pulsed brighter now, humming like a living thing. Elara stayed still, heart racing. If she turned, if she leaned back even slightly, everything would change. Outside, the moon began its slow descent. Time was slipping. Cal stirred behind her, tension rippling through him as awareness returned. He did not move away. "Morning is coming," he murmured. "I know. If you want to leave," he said, voice low and raw. "You must do it before the sun touches the peaks." Elara swallowed. Freedom was close enough to taste. So was something else, dangerous, unasked for, terrifying in its promise. She stared at the pale line of dawn creeping toward the window, and did not move. When dawn cuts the heart, the first ray of sunlight pierced the mountains like a blade. It slipped through the tall arched window and crept across the stone floor, slow and merciless, as if time itself were watching Elara make her choice. She still hadn't moved. Behind her, Cale was rigid with control. His breath was no longer even. It hitched, shallow and sharp, every instinct in him screaming to pull her close, to claim what fate had branded into his soul. "Elara," he said quietly. Hearing her name from his mouth did something irreversible to her. "I didn't know my name yesterday," she replied, voice soft. "Now you say it like it matters." "It does," he said immediately. "It always did." The bond flared, hot, aching, alive. Elara pressed her palm to her chest, feeling the echo of his heart answering her own across inches of space. If she stayed until full sunrise, the trial would be over. She would be free. The law was cruel that way. Cale shifted, pushing himself upright before his control shattered. The bed dipped as he moved away, creating distance with visible effort. Elora felt the loss like a wound. "You should go," he said, back to her shoulders tense. "Before I fail you." Elora sat up slowly. The room felt different now, brighter, sharper, filled with endings. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, feet touching cold stone. Freedom was a door she could still open. She stood. Cale didn't turn. "Last night," she said, steadying herself, "you gave me something no alpha ever has." He exhaled shakily. "I gave you restraint. You gave me a choice." She took a step toward the door. The bond screamed. Pain lanced through her chest, raw, unexpected. She gasped, clutching the doorframe. Kyle whirled around instantly, crossing the room in a blink. "Lara." He stopped inches from her, hands hovering, terrified to touch without permission. His eyes were wild now, the wolf close to the surface. "This is what it will feel like," he said hoarsely, "if you walk away." Tears burned her eyes. "Then why does it feel like I'm tearing you apart too?" Because she was. Kyle dropped to one knee before her, a king kneeling on cold stone. "Because fate does not bind one heart," he said. "It binds two." The sun crept higher. Time was almost gone. Elora looked down at him, the Alpha King, feared and revered, undone at her feet. She saw not power but loneliness etched deep into his bones. A ruler born to command, never chosen. Her hand trembled as she reached out. She touched his cheek. The bond exploded, not violently, warmth, recognition, a rush of memories not her own. A boy crowned too young. A man who buried softness beneath duty. A wolf who had waited his entire life for the one scent that felt like home. Kyle gasped, pressing his forehead to her stomach, fists clenched in her dress. "If you stay," he whispered, "there is no freedom from me." Alara's tears fell freely now. "I don't want freedom from you," she said. "I want freedom with you." Sunlight flooded the room. The trial ended. The bond sealed. The mark bloomed on her skin moments later, a silver crescent at the base of her throat, warm and pulsing. Elara swayed, overwhelmed, and Cale caught her instantly, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. He held her like something precious, something chosen. "You stayed," he murmured against her hair, wonder threaded through his voice. She laughed softly through tears. "You made it possible." Their lips met, not in hunger, not yet, but in reverence, a promise rather than a claim. Outside the howls began, not of challenge, of acceptance, but fate was never kind enough to end a story so gently. A horn sounded from the outer wall, sharp, urgent. Cal stiffened, instincts snapping into place. He set Elara down carefully, already turning toward the door. "That horn," she said, heart racing. "What does it mean?" Cal's expression darkened. "It means someone has crossed our borders," he said, "and they know exactly who you are." The doors burst open. A guard fell to one knee. "Your Majesty, the Southern Pack has arrived." Cal's jaw tightened. "And they demand the Omega," the guard continued, voice strained. "Who carries your mark?" Elara's hand flew to her throat. The world tilted. Kyle reached for her, grip firm and unyielding. "Then they have come," he said coldly, eyes blazing, "to declare war." He turned to her, softer now, fierce and certain. "And I will burn the world before I let them take you." The Omega the world wanted dead. The Southern Pack arrived under banners the color of dried blood. From the high balcony of Grimhold Keep, Elara watched them gather beyond the iron gates. Hundreds of wolves in human form, armored in leather and bone, their scents sharp with aggression. At their center rode Alpha Lord Varric, his smile thin, his eyes calculating. "They smell me," Elara whispered. Kyle stood beside her, one arm braced on the stone rail, the other subtly at her back. "They always have," he said. You just didn't know it. Her heart thudded painfully. Why? Cale turned to face her fully. The morning light caught the silver mark at her throat, making it glow. His gaze softened and hardened all at once. Because you are not just an Omega, he said. You are a key. The word landed like a blow. A key to what? Cale hesitated, then reached up, brushing his thumb near her mark without touching. To an old prophecy. One the packs buried because it terrified them. Before Elora could demand more, the war horn sounded again. The southern pack was growing impatient. Cale straightened. Stay here, with guards. No, Elara said instantly. If they came for me, hiding won't stop them. He studied her for a long, heavy moment, then nodded. Then you stand with me. As my mate. A throne room filled with power as Cale took his seat, Elara beside him. Whispers rippled through the gathered court when the doors opened and the southern delegation entered. Varric bowed shallowly. Alpha King, he said smoothly. Congratulations on your unexpected bond. Kyle's voice was ice. State your demand. Varric's gaze slid to Elara, sharp and hungry. The Omega belongs to us. By blood. Elara's breath caught. I don't even know you. You were born under our moon, Varric replied. Your mother fled before we could complete the rite. Cale leaned forward. She fled because you kill Omegas who carry power. The room went still. Varric's smile faded. With sacrifice what threatens balance. Elara's blood ran cold. Then you will not have her, Cale said, rising slowly. You will leave my lands now. Varric laughed. You think one bond will stop fate? She awakens the moon Gadi. With or without you. The words echoed ominously. Elara felt it then. A strange pull deep within her, older than fear. The mark burned. Images flickered in her mind, stone circles, silver fire, wolves bowing beneath a shattered moon. She gasped. Cale caught her. Easy, he murmured. Varric's eyes gleamed. See, she's already awakening. Cale's control snapped. Guards, he roared. Escort them out. Steel rang, the southern wolves bristled, hands hovering near blades. Varric bowed again, mockery dripping. We will return. When the moon is full. And just like that they were gone, leaving the scent of threat behind. That night Elara couldn't sleep. The visions came in fragments, silver light tearing the sky, her voice echoing across valleys, wolves kneeling, others burning. She woke with a cry, clutching the sheets. Cale was there instantly. It's starting, she whispered. I don't want this power. Kyle cupped her face, forehead to hers. Then we will learn it together. She searched his eyes. And if it destroys me, then it destroys me too, he said without hesitation. Her heart clenched. Outside, clouds devoured the moon. Far away, drums began to beat. War was coming. And Elara, the Omega who wanted only freedom, had become the prize everyone was willing to kill for. The night of the full moon arrived, wrapped in ash and wind. Storm clouds coiled above Grimhold Keep, swallowing the stars, yet the moon's pull was undeniable. Elara felt it in her bones, in the mark at her throat that glowed brighter with every heartbeat. The air itself seemed to lean toward her. She stood in the ancient lower sanctum, a place few had entered in generations. Stone pillars formed a circle around her, each carved with runes older than any pack law. At their center lay a disk of pale stone, smooth, cracked, waiting. The moon gate, Cale said quietly beside her. He wore no crown tonight, only battle leathers. It was sealed centuries ago. Elara swallowed. And now it's waking up. Yes, his gaze never left her, because it recognizes you. The pack elders watched from the shadows, fear and awe mingling on their faces. None stepped closer, none dared. Elara took a breath and stepped onto the stone disk. The moment her bare feet touched it, the runes ignited. Silver light surged upward, wrapping around her legs, her waist, her heart. She cried out, not in pain, but in overwhelming recognition. The bond between her and Cale flared in answer, pulling him forward despite himself. "Alara," he shouted. The light lashed toward him, connecting them. The gate responded to both. Images slammed into Alara's mind, Omegas hunted, silenced, broken because their power frightened alphas who feared losing control. She saw her mother running, bleeding, clutching a newborn under a dying moon. Anger burned through her fear. "This isn't destruction," Alara gasped. "It's balance." The light expanded, blasting through the sanctum ceiling and into the sky. Outside, wolves across the realm lifted their heads as the moon split open with silver fire. The moon gate had awakened. The southern pack attacked before dawn. Their war cries shattered the valley as they charged the keep, wolves shifting mid-run, claws ripping into stone. The north answered in kind. Kyle stood at the front lines, sword drawn, eyes blazing with alpha fury. But his attention never strayed far from Alara, who stood upon the battlements, the moon's light woven into her veins. Varric appeared through the chaos, bloodied but grinning. "You see," he shouted, "they will never follow an Omega." Alara stepped forward, voice carrying unnaturally across the battlefield. "They already are." She raised her hands. The moon gate's power answered not as fire but as command. Every wolf froze, not by force, by recognition. Wolves, Omegas, Betas, even Alphas fell to one knee as the truth settled into their blood. The balance had been broken long ago, and Alara was its correction. Varric staggered back, terror replacing arrogance. "This isn't possible." "It is," Kale said, appearing beside Alara. "And you're finished." Varric fled. The southern pack broke. The war ended not in slaughter but in silence. Afterward, as dawn painted the sky gold, Alara collapsed. Kyle caught her, holding her against his chest as the battlefield breathed again. "I didn't want to be a queen," she whispered weakly. Cal pressed his forehead to hers. "Then you won't be. You'll be something greater." She smiled faintly. "What?" "My equal." He kissed her then, deep, claiming, unafraid. Above them the moon faded whole again. The world had changed, and so had they.